Chinese team behind extreme animal gene experiment says it may lead to super soldiers who survive nuclear fallout. Modified human embryonic stem cells showed supernatural resistance against radiation, according to a paper by Academy of Military Sciences team in Beijing. Shanghai-based scientist says study may open can of worms, particularly when funding is involved. And they show a water bear there for some reason, a tardigrade. Now, the funny thing, this was Fallout video games. This is a component of the story that the writers created for that video game. Fallout is a story where there's a nuclear war, wipes everybody out, tons of people move into vaults, and there's something called the forced evolutionary virus that attempts to make humans more resistant to radioactive fallout, so they give people the virus to alter their genes. Instead, they get sterilized and their brain capacity diminishes. I don't know about whatever this is all about, but it is funny to me when you see works of fiction in some fashion be replicated by scientists. And I think it's because people who are writing fiction are imagining what the future could be like with the technology we're developing. And these stories
I'll give
persist.
you some fictitious future. A bunch of these guys with radiation resistance get a hold of the nuclear weapons and light the world up so that they're the ones that are left.
Now you're talking about Wrath of Khan.
They actually embedded tardigrade DNA into human embryonic stem cells to gain radiation resistance. This is amazing.
Yes.
Is that what it was, tardigrades?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought it was embryonic stem cells.
They put it into embryonic stem cells, the tardigrade genes.
And then they give it to soldiers.
So
and then
now you're talking about Wrath of Khan, where in Star Trek, humans genetically engineered themselves to become better, and then the genetically engineered people said, we're superior to them. And so then the humans were like, we got to get rid of these super soldiers. They're really bad. Sent them in outer space, froze them, basically. I think I may be getting the story wrong, but that's generally the idea.
Yeah. Military.com has another very interesting article that's titled, The Future U.S. Military Super Soldier May Be Closer Than We Think. So these projects, again, I was just speculating that they probably are in existence, and they are. So
what year? What is this? What's the date on this one? We have it right here. I don't see a date, though.
Military.com's great.
Yeah, there's no date on this. Though it may not look like the process that Steve Rogers went through, it may be coming within the next 30 years.
That's it.
And then there's a famous saying, whatever you think the U.S. military has, it's usually 30 years behind for what it already has right now.
Dudes are going to be able to breathe underwater, not have to breathe. They'll be able to see super far at night.
But why do this when we already have the robot dogs with guns and those Boston Dynamics robot people?
Because robots can't secure street corners, and they can get shut down by EMPs.
Robots can, perhaps, I wonder if they can do a Faraday shield over some of these robots. That probably would, I mean, I don't, they would be pre-programmed AI. I don't know how you control them if their signals are shut down. But yes, they can occupy street corners.
Yeah, maybe a street corner, but they can't occupy
aerial drones
governments and things.
can't. But robots can occupy street corners.
You guys have a very bright outlook for what's coming. First of all, you're giving a lot of credit. There's a movie that I'm thinking of, Idiocracy. Has anyone ever seen that?
Yeah.
Where the
mean the
military
documentary?
Half of it.
does an experiment where this like average Joe gets frozen for like 1,000 years or something. And when he wakes up, society has degraded in such a fashion that he is the smartest person on the planet. Society is in shambles. They don't know how to farm. They're running out of food. They have no water. It's a disaster.
And their president was a WWE wrestler.
Yes, exactly.
And Donald Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame.
So there, my whole point,
and they're wearing Crocs before Crocs became popular.
Is that true?
Yes.
Oh
Really?
my God.
Yes.
Wow.
You look at that movie, and they were wearing Crocs.
I'm
before Crocs
terrified
popped
we're
off.
headed down a path more likely.
It's not that we're headed.
No.
We're here.
Ballet.
It's happening
Welcome.
now.
Yes.
But look,
Plastics in the water supply,
Yeah.
the weird pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
that
Forever
14,
chemicals,
12-year-olds are getting put on.
seed
Adderall.
oils, the man boobs.
But I gotta hammer this point that Democrats sterilize their kids, abort their kids. So while they're actively and they actively argue against having kids. So while they're doing everything in their power not to have children, the right is having more kids, and they're fighting a culture war over children's education. So my point here is, if it were true that the left had unmitigated indoctrination of children, I'd say, okay, the right's in trouble. Your kids are going to get indoctrinated. But if there's a cultural battle over what's happening in these schools, and you combine the fact that Democrats are actively trying not to have kids, give it 20, 30 years, the country is back on track.
I hope so.
Regarding poisoning of like fat, you called them forever chemicals,
PFAs.
PFAs, perfluoroalkyl stuff. They figured out how to get them out of the soil. You hit it with lasers. You convert the soil into graphene. It removes the PFCs, the perfluoroalkyls, out of the graphene. Then you put the graphene back into the soil. It fertilizes the soil, and you've removed the forever chemical.
This graphene is a big deal.
Yeah, it's 21st century steel.
It's a big deal.
It'll be the building
It's a big deal.
the material
Yeah.
that
I'm
lets
getting
us
that.
lightweight build in space and on Earth. We can make clothing out of it. I'm not wearing any right now. I wear.
Do you have some graphene clothing?
Yeah, shirts. They're
Wow.
They're really cool in the heat, and they keep you warm in the.
I'm sure they do.
It's pure carbon.
Best of both
It's
worlds.
just carbon.
If we could come back to the point, I think a lot of this genetic manipulation is essentially governments playing with godlike power and authority, especially when it comes to creating super soldier babies, which obviously has been happening for a very long time. Obviously, the Chinese government is doing it, but technology is really advancing at such a fast pace that it's going to outpace our ability to control it. And I think we have already reached a point where maybe even artificial intelligence could already be in charge, and we might not even know about
Terminator.
it. Exactly, but
Yeah.
it's not even a Terminator-like society. It would be a lot slower and a lot more of human beings acquiescing to it slowly and surely. That would be a lot more beneficial for the system to kind of implement their total control on everyone. And you got to kind of ask yourself, what are they going to be using radiation-resistant super soldiers for?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question that I think we should be asking ourselves after looking at
to
these
go into the
articles.
fallout after the bomb drops, worst case scenario. But to go what you're saying, have you guys noticed, this is anecdotally, that your map programs are malfunctioning in the last couple of weeks? Have
What?
any of you guys had your like Google Maps
Who's
or your
saying
Waze? I've just noticed twice in the last 2 weeks from two different drivers them telling you to go right and then make a circle and then go back and then forth. And it's like, this could be AI.
What are you doing?
This could be a hack. This could be this is the long war. This is the way that this is the way that
Well, first of all,
you want to
all this-
confuse people.
Is anyone else reporting that these things are happening?
I'm just wondering anecdotally if you guys have experienced it, because
I
it's happened to me
haven't.
2 times
I haven't.
recent, and it clicked like this is what the Chinese would do to fight along, where you confuse and disorient the population. And if AI is tracking, do they turn right when we tell them to turn right when they know it's not? Then they'll know, like, okay, so it's easy to manipulate this one.
Well, of course it is.
You're right.
Yeah.
This is, I'm not saying it's happening now, but the strategy you're saying is correct. What they would do is, our enemies, whether it be China or Russia or whoever, would not disable GPS. They would not disable communications. GPS would be off by a degree. They would do things like that. Then we're less likely to notice, and then all of a sudden, our cruise missiles or whatever, hypersonics, are missing their targets.
I asked people on Twitter today, and a lot of them said, yeah. It was just anecdotal.
So I remember during Occupy being on the ground covering these protests, you hear this all the time. Even conservatives started saying it in 2017, 2018, when they started going out more and being in large crowds, that, the feds are jamming our cell phones. They're shutting our phones down so we can't communicate. And I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. They're spying on you. They want your phones to work. In fact, they deploy mobile cell units to high trafficked areas and protests to make sure your phones don't go down, because they're spying on you. Your phone went down because there's too many people here and the cell towers can't handle it. People don't understand. They think our enemies would disable GPS. No, that's ridiculous. They would spy on our GPS to track everything we do. They want us using these things.
Yeah, data is the new oil, and data harvesting and getting information on people, also getting their DNA, is something that the Chinese government has been doing in a very aggressive way. The FBI a couple years ago sent out a memo during COVID saying, hey, if you're taking a COVID test, just make sure you're disposing of the swab, since there's been Chinese government and Chinese government connected corporations taking those swabs and then data harvesting DNA from the American people in order to, of course, not just game the big pharma system, but more importantly, also just get the genetic information of the American people, which could potentially be used for genetic bioweapons, as we know are also in progress and in the works by the U.S. Pentagon.
Just because I already know there's people who are going to say, Luke's a conspiracy theorist. Here's the article from NPR. China wants your data and may already have it. Well, what data are you referring to? Your DNA. That's right. As COVID's cases began to rise a year ago, Chinese company contacted several U.S. states and offered to set up testing labs. As a byproduct, the Chinese firm Beijing Genomics Institute would likely gain access to the DNA of those tested. When I tell people that China's stealing your DNA, they go, okay, you're insane. So I don't say it that way. I say, do you see that NPR article, something about a Chinese company taking COVID tests to get the DNA out of it? And that still sounds insane. But don't worry, I just show them the article and say, I don't know, man. NPR is reporting it.
I have a different approach. I say China's stealing your DNA. The U.S. government already has it and is weaponizing it and probably using it against you as we speak right now.
Should I not have done the 23andMe?
No. That information also is being found to be sold on the black market. Everything if something is free, you are the product. So every little piece of information, they're data mining. The NSA, the U.S. government is collecting them in major servers. And it's not just your DNA. It's also the keystrokes. It's also your heart rate. It's also your biometric data that's being collected without your permission. What are you pointing at?
Point at your wrists. Well, both of your wrists.
But there's a specific strategy that you implement where you don't give your information off, and you're someone like, you're someone like a Ligma Johnson, right? Instead of Luke Rudkowski, this company now just has Ligma Johnson.
Hold on. Let me pause right there. They don't care about Luke Rudkowski's vitals. They care about the anonymized data. When they say things like, we don't take your information, or they say, like, we're going to collect your information for diagnostic reasons, but we do not attach your identity to it. It will be randomized and no one will know who you are. What they do when they take your DNA, assuming they do, they don't care your name. They're mapping populations. They're mapping characteristics. And because so many people have taken it upon themselves, even me, I'm wearing a Garmin watch which tracks health. They all do it now. I actually like the benefits I get from it, but I recognize all of us are snowflakes in an avalanche. When they collect all this data, they can collectively see detrimental health circumstances. They can also formulate bioweapons using that data. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.